In 1879, a 16-year-old boy left his father's farm with nothing more than a dream, heading for Detroit. It was a time when cars were just an expensive luxury for the rich. No one could have imagined that this young boy would go on to change the world of automobiles forever. The boy's name was Henry Ford. By 1914, half of all the cars in the world would carry his name, and he would become one of the wealthiest men in American history. This is the story of how Henry Ford revolutionized the car industry, forever shaping the world we live in today. Henry Ford was born on July 30th, 1863, in a small farmhouse on a farm in what is now Dearborn, Michigan. His father, William Ford, owned the farm, and as the eldest son, Henry was expected to take over the family business. But Henry wasn't like his father or the other farmhands. From a very young age, he was more interested in machines than in plowing fields. "I never had any particular love for farm," Ford once said. "It was the machinery on the farm I loved," while the farm required hard work and discipline. Henry's mind was always elsewhere, on the gears, the engines, and the technology that could make life easier, instead of following the path set out for him. Henry began to tinker with everything he could get his hands on. By the time Henry was 12, his natural curiosity had led him to take apart and repair his pocket watch. Soon, he was fixing watches for neighbors and earning a reputation as the go-to repairman. But his love for machinery didn't stop there. At 13, on a school trip to Detroit, Henry saw a steam engine in action for the first time. It was an experience that would ignite his passion for engines and machinery. Soon after, he began experimenting with steam engines in his free time, and by age 15, he built his first working steam engine. However, tragedy struck when Henry lost his mother to an illness. He had always been closer to her than anyone else on the farm, and this loss deepened his resolve to leave farming behind. At 16, he packed his bags and left for Detroit. Detroit, the city on the rise, was the perfect place for a young inventor. The city was transforming into the heart of America's industrial revolution. Henry found work at the Michigan Car Company, but was fired after just 6 days. He didn't give up though. Soon, he found an apprenticeship at James Flower and Brothers Machine Shop, earning a modest wage. To make ends meet, Henry also worked as a night jeweler, fixing watches for an extra $3 a week. But all this time, he never stopped learning about machines. He spent his free hours reading about steam engines, trying to understand how they worked, and continuing his experiments. In 1885, after a few years of working odd jobs, Henry returned to Michigan. He hated farming, so he spent most of his time tinkering with his father's portable steam engine, becoming incredibly skilled with it. Soon, word of his mechanical talent spread. Henry was hired by the Westinghouse Engine Company to travel around Michigan servicing steam tractors. In 1885, he also met Clara Bryant, whom he married the following year. As a wedding gift, his father gave him 40 acres of land, but Henry had no interest in farming. Instead, he saw it as an opportunity to experiment with machinery. In 1891, Henry moved with Clara to Detroit, where he stumbled upon a British magazine featuring a new technology, the gas engine. This new engine was radically different from steam engines, and Henry was fascinated by it. The fact that it worked on internal combustion and didn't require long warm-ups made it seem like the future of transportation. Henry learned everything he could about gas engines and, in 1893, began working for the Edison Illuminating Company. This job gave him the chance to experiment with electricity, while his mind was still focused on one goal, building a horseless carriage. In 1896, Henry finally created his first experimental car, a quadricycle. It wasn't much to look at. It was essentially two bicycles side by side, powered by a gasoline engine, but it worked. He made a few adjustments, including a cooling system to prevent overheating, and even sold it for $200. With the money, he began working on a second, more advanced car. But Ford's first real company, the Detroit Automobile Company, was born in 1899. Unfortunately, it was short-lived. The company struggled due to slow production, and Henry was fired. But he didn't let failure defeat him. Rather than retreating, Henry focused on building race cars to show off his designs. In 1901, his racing car beat the best in the nation, including the famous Alexander Winton. This victory gave Henry the recognition and investors he needed to start again. In 1903, the Ford Motor Company was born, but in typical Henry fashion, he didn't always play by the rules. The investors wanted him to focus on mass production of passenger cars, but Henry had other ideas. He left the company briefly, but by 1904 he was back, and things would never be the same again. Henry Ford was a genius, but it was his revolutionary approach to manufacturing that really set him apart. In 1908, he introduced a Model T, a car that anyone could afford, but he didn't stop there. Ford was constantly searching for ways to make production faster and more efficient. After visiting a Chicago slaughterhouse in 1904, he realized that the assembly line could work in car manufacturing. In 1913, Ford made the first moving assembly line. What once took 12 hours to produce now took just 90 minutes. This increased production exponentially, allowing Ford to sell millions of Model Ts at a price anyone could afford. By 1914, half the cars on Earth were Fords. The assembly line revolutionized not only Ford, but the entire manufacturing industry. Ford also introduced another groundbreaking innovation, doubling his workers' wages to $5 a day. It was a bold move, but it paid off. Workers flocked to Ford for better pay, and productivity soared. In 1919, Henry Ford bought out his investors and became the sole owner of Ford Motor Company. He was now the richest man in America, but there was more work to be done. Despite Ford's success, he didn't always adapt to changing times. As competitors like Chevrolet and General Motors grew, Henry refused to stop producing the Model T, even as consumer tastes began to shift. By the late 1920s, Ford had to face the reality that the Model T was no longer in demand. In 1927, he introduced the Model A, but it was too late to stop the decline. The Great Depression and the rise of competitors sent Ford Motor Company into decline. Still, Henry Ford's legacy remains. He revolutionized the automobile industry and set the stage for mass production and affordable cars for everyone. Today, Ford Motor Company is one of the largest car manufacturers in the world, with a market cap of $70 billion. Henry Ford's vision, determination, and inventions have left an indelible mark on the world. His story is one of failure, persistence, and triumph. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing stories. Until next time, keep dreaming big and never stop pushing forward.